Hey, everybody. You're listening to Area Code Batavia, a podcast about what it means to belong in Batavia, Illinois. I'm your host, Richard Clark. I normally have a script that I read when I do these intros that is pre-written. Today, for a number of reasons, I have not done that. I'm just going to kind of talk from my heart off the cuff about this episode and what I'd like you to know going into it. This conversation is with Jennifer Orta. Jennifer is the only Spanish-speaking licensed mental health provider and community educator at Suicide Prevention Services of America. Some of you may know that Suicide Prevention Services of America is located here in Batavia. They have a location right near downtown, the downtown area. But this conversation was important for me to have because it touches on something I have been personally paying attention to and honestly agonizing over for the last few weeks. A lot of you probably know that we've seen an increase in the immigrant and customs enforcement activity here in not just Chicago, but the Chicagoland area. And one thing that I followed with great interest was where these instances of sort of raids and arrests were happening. In particular, one thing I noticed was that it was taking place all around us. So it has taken place in most of our sort of neighbor communities, but we haven't really seen anything here in Batavia, which sort of left me wondering, like, is this something that we even need to know about as community members in Batavia? And the more I talk to people who are in those neighboring communities and their experience living in the Tri-Cities and even next door to Batavia, I think there's a feeling of like we are sort of all in this together. And what's happening to Latino communities right now is honestly, to me, a really sad thing and a really unfortunate thing. I'm going to let you know a little bit of where I'm coming from. At least in this episode, and as I think about this for the Area Code Batavia and what we value on this podcast, I'm primarily thinking about issues of belonging. In particular, one of my values is that you should treat every single person with humanity. And I am concerned that a lot of the ways that immigration and customs enforcement has happened has created an atmosphere where people's humanity is being disregarded. And that is really dangerous to a sense of belonging in a community. And not just for those people directly affected, but for the people that are around those things, the people who find themselves defending or even fighting those things. It can be really easy to fall into this arms race of seeing each other as less than human. In my conversation with Jennifer, I wanted to talk to her about the emotional and mental health impact of these current events that are happening in our area. What does that do to the Latino community? And what has that done to communities in general as we sort of face this really unprecedented thing where this stuff is being ramped up and people are sort of being pulled off the streets? I mean, it is just what is happening. People are going to apartments, people are going into places of businesses and essentially raiding them. It creates an atmosphere that affects our sense of belonging. That's sort of the issue and the set of issues that I wanted to explore here. Here's my conversation with Jennifer Orta. Tell us what your role is, like what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Besides running around chasing a 3-year-old.
Exactly, yes.
Besides chasing a 3-year-old. So I work for Suicide Prevention Services of America and Stone Manor Counseling in Batavia, and we also have our location in Aurora. I am a bilingual psychotherapist. So I have my master's in clinical mental health counseling, child and adolescent specialty. So I went to grad school in Marquette in Milwaukee, and I got my master's in that, and I provide evidence-based therapy to children and adolescents.
Can you describe, like for our listeners, the look and feel of what is going on right now in terms of like the Latina community in relation to ICE?
you went straight to the deep.
Yeah. I mean, I think I want to just set a scene so people know what we're talking about.
Because there's no easy way to get into it.
Yeah.
It's not like in school where it's like, all right, you write your introductory paragraph and then, then you point 1, 2, and 3, right?
Yes.
It's more of just like, let's not beat around the bush and talk about it.
I think so.
Because not a lot of people are talking about it.
Right.
And how we're hearing it is very like black and white kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right. It's on or off.
Yep.
Absolutely.
It's like...
So that's why I go from how was work to on.
Yep.
Now we're talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's all on... I mean, I don't know if your social media... Like if you have your own personal social media besides your work social media.
Yeah.
But your social media and my social media are probably very different.
Yes.
In terms of like, as soon as I open Facebook, I have a page of ICE spotted 30 minutes ago at, just a little bit ago, Walmart on 34 in Oswego, which is like 20 minutes away from here.
Yeah.
So just seeing that is like, they're inching on our heels kind of thing.
Yeah. So if you are Latina and living in the Fox Valley, by the way, just stop for a moment. Is it correct to say Latina community? Am I saying that correctly? What is the best way to?
There's a lot. And I appreciate you.
Yeah. I did
asking.
a little research to make sure, because I've never had it straight in my head and I'm forgetful in general. And I know it's different.
No, it's different from a personal standpoint.
Okay.
As well as a political standpoint. And then basically the term Latino, Latina, Latinx is more to include people who identify as either non-binary or multiple different identities, but also our indigenous ancestry, because sometimes in the tribes they didn't identify as like male or female. That's kind of more of a newer term, right? Okay. So it's more of like the goddesses and the gods kind of all coming together. And it was just like the spirit, basically. Obviously, there's more to it, but that's kind of like the rundown. Usually, I identify as a Latina. I identify as a woman, as a female. But sometimes you see like Latinos with the @ sign.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that, or Latinx. It's more on like personal preference.
Yeah.
Personally, I prefer Latina. It's kind of like equivalent kind of to like pronouns, right?
So how should we refer to the community as we're talking about this?
Yeah, Latino community, because I think Hispanic is more of Spanish-speaking countries. That's including Spain, right? Versus Latinos is people in Latin America, which also includes Brazil and other non-Spanish-speaking countries.
Okay, got it. Yeah. So you were saying in the Fox Valley area,
yes,
the Latino community is experiencing, what is the day-to-day life that they're experiencing right now?
Well, it all depends on your legal status, right? If you, speaking from my own personal, I was fortunate enough to be born here, so I am a U.S. citizen. I don't necessarily have the same fears or anxieties that someone who immigrated and does not have legal status here, because you never know if, you're going to leave and you don't know if you're going to make it back home.
Right.
If you're undocumented, right? It's something that's always talked about in the community, but now it's when it's becoming an actual fear of this could happen to you.
Yeah, so this was something that, when you say make it back home, you mean you don't know if you're going to leave to go to the grocery store or whatever.
Or drop your kids off. And
the difference is sort of more, it was an abstract fear before, and now it's extremely concrete.
Yes. Like in the 90s, it was not necessarily pretty common, but it was more in like factories. There would be like raids in factories.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
In like Chicago, LA, more of like the bigger cities. But now in the suburbs, it's like, it's typically considered safer, kind of like a safe haven.
Right.
But now it's just kind of like a free for all. And I think that, there are, government officials living in the suburbs because it's a federal job. Jobs are jobs, right? And so they kind of have the inside information on where people
interesting.
Congregate. And
so they will inform sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, we have to, I understand you have to be safe.
Yeah.
There is their job to be safe, but it's more of how it's going about.
So you said that the people who are really worried are, what's the term you used?
People who don't have documentation.
People who don't have documentation. Yeah. My understanding is that sometimes it goes beyond that. There are other people who do have documentation or who are legally here and still get something.
Yes.
Can you say, like, what have you heard or seen around that?
So actually last week I was driving from picking up one of our newsletter for work from Wally's on Fransworth. And I was just driving and I see these 3 trucks kind of come up, tinted windows, masked men. And there was this guy just chilling in the corner with his bike. He saw the cars pull up and he took out his wallet immediately and showed them his ID. And they just kind of looked at him. They took a picture of him, saw his ID, and then they left.
Huh. Where was this?
This was in Aurora on Smith, the corner of Smith and New York Street.
Okay. And what was your emotional reaction to seeing those trucks?
So I knew that they were around because on Facebook I'd seen in the morning, ICE is around this area or that area.
Yeah.
And so I was just on alert of like, okay, where are they kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But when I saw them, I'm like, no way. I didn't think that I could see them. Mm-hmm. I just took my phone out and started recording. Mm-hmm. Got the license plate numbers. Just kind of, obviously you can't see their face because they have masks on.
Yeah.
But I got the license plate numbers and I was shaking. I was anxious. I was like, what if this person didn't have his ID?
Yeah. Did you have a feeling of like, I'm in danger right now? Or
Not necessarily, but it was more of like that instinct of, do I drive in there and do I film? Do I put myself at risk physically or do I just do what I can and film?
Yeah.
And then post it on social media. I called the Illinois Coalition of things like immigrant or refugee rights here in Illinois and just give them the license plate numbers. And they actually investigate and they have people out making sure that these are actual agents and actual correct information because anybody can, call that number. But they did put out the message that they were spotted. And so that's what I did for my community.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is anxiety provoking.
Yeah. I mean, like you seem concerned about other people. We've talked at length before this recording. And the impression I got was that you're concerned for other people. But I'm curious, as a person in that community, I mean, some of the messaging I'm hearing, and I'm sort of trying to sort through, not like truth and fact, not truth and fiction, but like that's good too, but also just the emotional reality throughout the community. People that are here with papers and people who aren't. But the question I have is like, what is your level of fear in relation to these things? Like, why do you seem to be fine? I guess in some ways, in comparison to other people around you.
Fine in terms of what?
Well, you seem not as stressed, fearful in general. I mean, if your reaction to that, so I think your actions there in that moment speak volumes. Some people's impulse would be to get out of there.
Yep.
Your impulse was to stay around, put yourself maybe in harm's way and video. Some of that may have to do with your character, but I also wonder, like, is you being legal, is it a little bit less precarious?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say because I know my rights. I also there's a lot of know your rights trainings and there's a lot of like red cards, which, we talked about, but it's more of like what I can do legally.
Yes.
In the state of Illinois, you legally can record law enforcement, federal or state or your own, the police department in the area, you can legally record them. It's when you're interfering, right? When you're like in their face and, screaming at them and talking to all the, doing all these things are unfortunately, getting violent. But the emotions are high. I totally, understand, but it doesn't make it okay. So I knew that it was within my rights as an American citizen, as a person, to film them and tell people, hey, this is what they're driving. This is, what they kind of look like in terms of height. Just being careful and saying this is, they are out there. If you can, don't leave your homes if you don't necessarily need to. But by the time sometimes that message gets across to people, it's too late.
So right now, like, what does your day look like?
Every day is different. I go into work, check emails, and then I have some clients scheduled. It's typically the same ones every week or every other week. Yeah. I also go to different schools. We have different partnerships with different districts in the Fox Valley area. So we go out and, if there is also a risk, a student said something to a peer, a teacher's kind of seen some signs of them being at risk for a crisis, then we go out and do an assessment, and we either send the child to the hospital or the teen for further evaluation, or we schedule them with us to receive services.
And you're checking for a risk of mental health crisis that results in some sort of...
Our organization did start as a prevention for suicide and just kind of awareness.
Right.
But it's more of like, do they need help? What can we do right now to get them the help that they need? Whether it's emergency, that we need to, make sure that they're safe, or, this is an acute crisis and we can do outpatient therapy.
Got it. So what is happening right now in Fox Valley, what impact has that had on the work that you've been doing? And I guess specifically on the people that you work with.
Yeah. So I was hired as the bilingual therapist. There hadn't been a bilingual therapist for a while at suicide prevention services. So I was kind of hired on to do presentations in Spanish, do community education in Spanish, also in English. And so this past month, we did a lot of suicide prevention presentations in the elementary and middle schools. I did the ones in Spanish, right?
Okay,
and so the kids were kind of like being a little silly, goofy, fifth graders. But then, when we talked about stress and stressful events, that's when kind of the atmosphere kind of changed, or the tone of the presentation kind of changed, because kids were a little bit more quiet, or I had some kids that would raise their hand and say oh, my grandma's not leaving her house. My, so-and-so hasn't left their house in this long, or my mom says not to turn on the TV or not to talk to this person, or, whatever the case might be. And it's those little kids who don't understand what's going on. What do you mean I might go home and my mom and dad might not be there? And it's you feel for that kiddo, because it's they don't know what could happen.
Right. How are you having those conversations? What do you say about that?
I validate them.
Yeah.
It's normal to have those fears in these situations, but just know that we're here to support you and help you through these emotions, right? It's okay to have a bad day. Everyone has a bad day, right? But it's when you have a lot of back days back to back that it's okay, what's going on? Right?
Are you starting to see the impact of the back-to-back days of anxiety building up?
Yes. And I think that not necessarily in my day-to-day, but just kind of what's on the news and what's kind of conversations that I'm having with my peers or, on social media, tensions are rising. And so sometimes when we are very anxious is because we don't have control of things, right? That causes that uncertainty, that, those physical and emotional reactions. So what happens is after we're struggling with anxiety for a few days, a few hours, that's when sometimes we become irritable or annoyed and we act impulsively, right? We act without thinking twice of our actions or being aware of our surroundings.
Yeah.
And so our fight or flight also gets impacted, right? It gets kind of initiated of there's ice, I need to save whoever they're taking, or I need to, jump to action, right? And so that's where we start making those decisions of, we start yelling and we start being in people's faces. And, I get it. It's kind of that fight or flight, but that's where kind of agents' actions also switch, right? Because they're trying to protect themselves as well.
Yeah.
So you get these two tensions and it's people fighting against each other, whether it's verbally or physically. And then everyone's oh, now what? Now we're all going to go into, the National Guard was here recently.
Yeah.
Right. And so now it's
just in Chicago,
fear.
right?
Yeah. Just in Chicago. I think they were sent back, but you see all the tensions rising.
Yeah.
And it's me as a clinician, I know I'm something's going to just poof.
Right.
Right. There's going to be some type of event and then they're going to be see, the Latino community is dangerous, or, these people are starting to label us as, these people.
You're concerned that there will be a feeling. Yes. I mean, this is a tale of as old as time, it was happening during the George Floyd protests and stuff that, where you get frustrated enough, and it is hard to control yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens to all of us. It happens with me and my kids.
Exactly. Yeah. Like a toddler, they didn't get, my son didn't get the ice cream he wanted. He's going to throw a temper tantrum.
Right. Exactly.
That's how he expresses emotions.
Yes. And sometimes I get annoyed that my kid is yelling a lot and then I yell back or something. Yeah.
But that's, yelling might hurt his feelings.
Yeah.
Right. And your feelings. But you can typically patch that up. What happens when you're out on the street, emotions get high, someone's life is at risk, someone gets arrested.
Right.
I mean, someone, she is a U.S. citizen, I think in like Hoffman States, who she was following ICE. Tensions are high. They pulled them over, they yanked them out of the cars and arrested them. And one of the male officers put his knee, he was significantly bigger, like size-wise.
Yeah.
And he put his knee on her neck, like on the back. She's trying to do what she can. Her emotions are high. His emotions and adrenaline are high too, because he wants to protect himself and his group as well. What's going to happen when, what's going to be the cherry on top? What's going to be that event that just kind of blows everything up?
Right. How do I put this? It seems like the only hope for solving a situation like that is to have one party be extremely good at de-escalation and to be trained in that sort of thing, which some police departments are.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like ICE is.
No.
And I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't know much, but it does seem like from what we're seeing, that doesn't. So then have you thought about whether, like, is that responsibility now sort of de facto put on your community to sort of learn how to de-escalate in a moment when, I mean, it shouldn't be your responsibility, but it almost feels like, based on what you're saying, the only it's not the only solution. Yeah.
Or not necessarily solution, but the Band-Aid.
Right. Yes.
The Band-Aid.
Well,
Band-Aid, I mean, there's a lot of know your rights trainings on what your rights are as American citizen, as a legal resident, as a person, right? You have the right, even though somebody might not have residency or citizenship, or they're seeking asylum, or whatever the case might be, they have rights as a human being in this country.
Right.
Right. They have the right to remain silent. They have the right not to jeopardize themselves or incriminate themselves. Yeah. So there's all these red cards that I've even, handed out at different coffee shops, different public places. I don't know if you've seen the yard signs. It's like, know your rights. You have the right to remain silent. And it says it in Spanish and in English.
Okay. Yeah.
And so that way it's, in the moment you forget, right? Your adrenaline's really high, your anxiety's really high, you kind of maybe even black out.
Yeah.
So it's just educating, I guess, everyone, whether you have citizenship, residency, documentation, or you don't, is that you have the right to remain silent. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to sign anything.
Yeah.
You have the right to an attorney. So it's more educating. And like you said, that does kind of fall back on us. Us meaning us who have legal status. I'm Mexican. I had the privilege of being born here, but people who came before me didn't.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's, how do we give back to them that their sacrifices have been enough? And that's its own kind of similar to survivor's guilt, or if you've heard of that, when someone's in crisis or passes away, the people who are left behind feel that guilt for surviving, right? And so there's this guilt that's like, we have to become something or someone or protect our community as a way of giving back for all this ISIS.
But you're saying that's unhealthy.
Yes.
Or can be.
It can be.
Yeah.
Right? There's one thing using it as like empowerment, right?
Yeah.
That's something that I use in motivation to get through college, to get through, the difficult moments of every day of, I got to turn in this paper, or I got to make sure, I really don't want to go to work today, or, whatever the case might be. But when it's happening every day, every moment, the first thing you log on to social media is, I spotted here, here, and here. Yeah. They took, arrested so many people. Today I saw one of like a mom carrying her infant getting arrested. We don't know if that infant was born here. Yeah. Right? What's going to happen to that infant? Yeah. Do they have family who's going to, I think it was a little boy. Is their family going to come claim them? Yeah. And are they going into foster care?
What's frustrating about all of those questions is that they are all questions that are attempting to solve a fundamental injustice, which is a baby being taken from its mom. Like that's already happened. That's a settled thing. And like now, and I just like, I think I'm still trying to this conversation is partially for this to help me and maybe people listening sort of wrap their heads around what is and isn't really happening and what is and what it does and doesn't really feel like. And it's hard because I think like a lot of what you're describing are coping strategies, which is like a way of holding off on that question of how am I really feeling?
Yeah.
And it sort of boggles my mind to think about there's entire communities in our communities that are currently trying to push through what is happening emotionally.
Yeah.
And so I don't even know how to like talk about that other than to acknowledge that up front and think about like, so going back to the impact you've seen, the thing that struck me was the idea that you've seen more, like the number of assessments you've had to make has climbed. Can you talk about that?
Yes. I've had more assessments, more risk assessments after the presentations that we've done, specifically in like the Spanish classrooms. One of the, kind of conversations that I've had with, the kiddos in the class is like, I come from a Mexican household, right? We don't talk about mental health.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't, and I'm like, who here talks about mental health with their kid, with their family? And it's like one hand maybe.
Because culturally, it's not much of a thing?
Yeah, culturally. So this goes back to home countries.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it goes back in the,
it's a bit of
days.
An immigrant thing in general too,
yes.
right? Because it feels like the attitude is, to oversimplify, we don't have time to think about that, or we don't have the chance to think about
because we're working, we're trying to send money back home, we're trying to make sure we don't get abducted on the street, right? We're trying to make sure we make it home, we try to get our kids from, school, do everything in 24 hours, right? So we don't have time. And I grew up, in Aurora, but growing up here, I was like, I don't have time to worry about that, because if I talk about feeling anxious or feeling sad, it's like, I am not grateful for the sacrifices that the people before me did, right? It's like, you're ungrateful. We had to come and, leave our family. And for you to say, I'm anxious, I'm worried about an exam. It's like, that doesn't make sense versus I'm worried that I'm not going to make ends meet. Yes. I'm worried that I'm not going to be able to pay rent. Yes. I'm worried that my job might get raided at some point. Right.
So you grew up that way and now you're a counselor.
Yeah.
So why did you decide to pursue that work?
So I saw within my own, mental health struggle, I was a crier. I still am. Growing up, I was that, kid who was always crying. I was crying when I was sad. I was crying when I was happy. When my parents would yell at me, I'd start crying. And then my parents were like, why are you crying? I'm like, I don't know. And so they'd be like, well, cry when I die. So then I start crying because I'm thinking about them dying. And then I'm like, what's going to happen to me and my brother? Where are we going to go? Are we going to stay here? Do we have to go with my grandma? So it's all these, intrusive thoughts kind of coming in. Yeah. And then I would just either eat, sleep, or my mom would send me to clean the bathroom.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And so those were my coping skills. And that's, something that I learned on my own. But it wasn't until college where I'm like, I have anxiety. And nobody knew. Yeah. Nobody, really talked about it. Now we do. Now it's a common thing and to talk about it, and at least in my house and my family. And even my 3-year-old is learning about emotions and, daycare and, at home as well. But I started because I also did a lot of research in undergrad of how there's something called the immigrant paradox. Our family comes here to get a better life, to, become rich and seek that quote unquote American dream, that white picket fence. But
I still don't have one. I'm working on it.
Me neither. And, our ancestors come here to get a better life, to get all that. But what ends up happening is the generations that follow, so at least the first and the second generation, are more susceptible to health and physical health and mental health diagnoses because of the kind of that guilt kind of talked about of like feeling ungrateful. Yeah. Feeling like you're, like, for example, for me, feeling too Mexican to be American, but too American to be Mexican. Right? You're hearing about all this happening, with ICE and, immigration, all that stuff, but it's not necessarily happening within your area.
Right. Yes. That's something like I think is important to point out is like Batavia. Yeah, I haven't seen any I heard like one rumor of one instance, and I have seen no verification of that.
No.
I don't think there's a lot happening here, and I've thought a lot about how do we address that on the podcast, or if we need to address that on the podcast. And I think I sort of came to the conclusion of it's important to because it's happening all around us. It's happening to our sort of neighbors.
Yeah.
And ultimately in the Tri-Cities.
Yeah, it is. I think during COVID, I remember some restaurants in downtown, either St. Charles or Geneva, got raided by ICE. And I'm like, Geneva?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Yeah.
Because that's always been kind of like the safe haven or the good areas, right? The good areas versus growing up in Aurora. It's like, oh, here's the immigrant community. This is where, you kind of live when, you have a family who's immigrated. But then Batavia is kind of like that stepping stone of, okay, we're making it. We're, going up the food chain.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It was always, at least growing up, and still is a very not diverse area.
Yeah, but
not very diverse. Now it's becoming a little bit more diverse.
Okay.
Right? With new businesses that are coming in, and like my generation is now moving, quote unquote, up the food chain. They're buying their houses over there.
Why is that happening? Why is it becoming more diverse? Why are people who aren't white going to Batavia?
I think just trying to get out of Aurora.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I love Aurora.
Yeah.
I love Aurora, but then also look at what's happening with ICE.
So Batavia is becoming a place you go to avoid the current situation. That's happened in the last few months? You're speaking anecdotally, obviously.
It's just, metaphorically, but even like a few businesses have opened up in downtown Batavia.
Right.
Like the Cinco de Mayo market.
Yeah.
I know there's a House of Chilaquiles, which has been there. It's really good. But even that other store.
Cinnamore.
Those were not there when I grew up, right? Yeah. I know I had friends in Batavia who would come to Aurora to eat Mexican food.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
And so now it's like you can literally go and get it there.
Yeah.
And so I think it's more of just kind of like that Batavia still that quote unquote American dream.
Interesting. The thing you were talking about before was this feeling of feeling like you were talking about struggling with belonging. Yeah. Essentially. And that is a big reason like the mental health struggles often come up.
Yes.
So that is, I think, that's a thread I want to pull because paired with what we just talked about, Batavia being a place where, hopefully we're going to see more diversity over the next months, years, whatever. What can Batavians do to help people feel in this situation, feel like they belong, feel more of a sense of belonging?
Educating
themselves.
Yeah, okay. Educating themselves, educating their kids, right? You have kids, that they'll pick up, they'll be like, where did you learn that? They're listening. And just becoming aware of how we talk about things and what we talk about and how we address people. People talk about undocumented people as illegals. What does that mean? Illegals, right? It makes them seem like criminals. Oh, that person, it's a robber, or that's a thug, or that's a gang.
It definitely sounds scary.
Right? Yeah. It's like, are they going to pull a knife on me?
Right.
Right? You see these, you think of the worst, right? And then you have some politicians talking about, some bad hombres and kind of criminalizing them, when in reality, it's just maybe, there are bad people who come everywhere.
Yeah.
Like worldwide. But when it's these kind of raids happening, you're thinking, wow, they're catching all these criminals, or it's like an FBI raid on, this house that's selling drugs. That's kind of what it's equated to.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So when you say educate, do you just mean on these questions of like the best way to talk about things and what is really happening on the ground? Is that what you're saying?
It's a variety. It's educating on how to refer to people. There's obviously, derogatory words that we can call other people. And it's just educating on, if you hear that, say, hey, please don't say that. That's not nice.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Because then you start having all these parents and kids saying all these derogatory words and it becomes their quote unquote normal.
I think I'm going to say this. I think my listeners and people in Batavia in general, but definitely my listeners sort of know not to use derogatory words. And I think they even know the words not to use.
Yeah.
To a large extent now. Like me, they might not know Latina, Latino, Hispanic, and that's important to learn. I'm wondering, like, to the point of, like, when you are interacting with people, what should we know about, like, because frankly, let me say this. Frankly, I think we struggle to help each other belong anyway. Just in general, humans have a hard time belonging and have a hard time bringing people in when you feel belonging, you're pretty comfortable. You don't want to mess with that. So, like, is there something specific or unique about this community that we should know as we seek to welcome them into our community as they're moving here, or if they're already here, like help them continue to feel belonging in a moment where they are feeling like people are not welcoming to them? Yeah.
I would say ask questions.
I'd rather
have people ask me questions than assume. Because I am white passing. Let's consider, I am more fair skinned, right? A lot of people be like, oh my gosh, you speak Spanish. Like, where are you from? Or where did you learn Spanish? It's like, well, my house. I grew up, I'm Mexican. Asking questions, but also not asking the right questions. Not being like, oh, not kind of having that like sarcastic or, oh, I didn't know you were Mexican.
Which is an attitude thing. Like, it's more about having the right
that prejudice.
Posture.
And also that prejudice of, or that's not what I think a Mexican looks like, or that's not what I think an illegal looks like, right? And just supporting the shops, supporting the small businesses, supporting the new businesses. Even though it's, King County, prices in Batavia are a little bit more expensive than Aurora, right? Just kind of given the demographics and how the cost of living, right? The rent is probably higher over there. So maybe their prices do bump up a little bit. If you're able to, I know on this economy, but if you're able to, shop Latino. Yeah, there's a lot of grocery stores here and a lot of, just places here in Aurora that are seen all over the country as well, but seeing a very low customers base. Their, typical customers are
lower
afraid.
Than normal?
Yes.
Because they're afraid.
They're afraid to come out.
Yeah, and their constituency in general is staying inside more.
Exactly.
Oh, man, I didn't think about that.
Yeah. So we're going to see the ripple effect at some point of the economy. Produce is going to waste. Yeah. I was in a meeting, I think it was like a week ago. The food's going to waste in the food pantries.
Wow.
Because people they're scared within reason.
That location will be targeted.
Yes, or on their way home, or just they're open the door and poof, right? Because kind of what happened in Chicago with the apartment complex that they just broke in. Yeah. Because people, again, don't know their rights, and that, if that does end up happening, then there is support.
Yeah. You've been doing this work for how long?
Mental health?
Yes.
Mental health since 2021. I graduated in 2021 for my master's, but I was a therapist through the pandemic. So I started in 2020. I think I had like 2 weeks of in-person school and in-person therapy, and then we transitioned to online. So I've been a therapist since. So
the question I was going to ask is actually pretty funny in respect to that, because I was going to ask, did you ever expect when you went into this that you would be dealing with a moment like this? And the reason that question is kind of funny is because you started in a relatively unprecedented moment, especially on a mental health level. Yes. I mean, you're talking two massive events.
Yes. Unprecedented events.
Unprecedented events with unprecedented mental health implications, it feels like.
Yes.
Like, can you talk about when you went into the mental health field, did you do it with this sort of thing in mind? Like, I want to be available for such a moment as this?
No. I was like, I want to have more anxiety in my life. No, I went into this because I saw that there was not a lot of Spanish-speaking providers, a lot of therapists, or just mental health providers. I think in the country, there's like 2% of Latinas have a master's degree. So, I'm proud to be part of that 2%. I don't know how many actual providers there are. But I went into this because a lot of parents don't speak English, and a lot of their kids, sometimes a protective factor is that parents don't teach them Spanish so that they don't feel left out of their white peers.
You're right. Right.
So it's kind of like a protective thing, but it's also losing a little bit of that culture that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff lost in translation. If their kids are translating, because I grew up translating for my family. Right. Yeah. And it's like, that's that anxiety of like, what do you mean I have to read this legal document? I'm in second grade.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be able to take away that anxiety from the kiddos and trying to take that and saying, okay, I studied, I educated myself. I went to school. I had the privilege to be able to do so.
Yeah.
Let me help you.
Right.
Let me be able to provide services for you in the language that feels more comfortable for you, and understanding, the barriers in our community, the cultural, the religious, the documentation process of it.
Yeah.
Right? Because, there's lots of services available, but it's for people who have legal status. Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't qualify for that. Or here, let me provide some resources for you. Here's places that take sliding scale. Here are community health centers that can provide these resources for you. Because at the end of the day, they're human beings.
Yeah.
They deserve medical and mental or, go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I just wanted to educate people, because in a lot of the research that I did in undergrad, I was a lot of moments of like, wow, like, how do we help these people? Because I was just collecting data. And it's like, I saw the depression scores increasing, anxiety scores increasing. And I'm like, but what are people doing? It's just like, okay, now what do I do? Oh, I just took that, collected that data. This person's severely depressed. All right, next participant. And it's like, what do you mean? Like, they're just going to be depressed and not have support?
You felt a drive to actually help them.
Exactly. And I know I can't help everybody.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. So, that's got to be hard right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
You're going from school to school.
Yes.
You're seeing kids impacted by this.
Yeah. But kids don't know how to bring it up because it's not a topic. One, you don't talk about mental health. Two, you don't talk about your family's legal status.
Totally.
Because then you become a target.
Okay. This is the thing that's driving me nuts, is how you can't talk about it. Like consistently this theme comes up where we don't even know. Like, I remember, was it Aurora the city officials in Aurora said for a long time, we did not say anything about this because we did not want to make our town, our city, a target. And it just made me think it's such a great example of the fundamental problem, which is the people who are most affected are not able to speak up in the way that they maybe would otherwise. They don't have the protections and they're vulnerable.
Yeah.
And as a result, it's made it very hard, I think, for a lot of us to know what's happening, what it feels like, what to say, how to address it.
Yeah. And even now, it's like, it's kind of a shame.
Yeah.
Like a kind of a thing of shame of like, what do you mean you don't have papers? You've been here for how many years? What? And it's like, what do you mean you don't have papers? Like, how do you survive? Are you living off the government? And blah, blah, blah. It's like, no. People who don't have documents aren't able to receive help from the government. Why? Because if, you log on to create an account to get food stamps or to get Medicaid or Medicare, you have the first question it asks you is, what's your social security number? If you don't have a social security number, you can't advance to the second page.
Right.
So it's like this, again, misinformation of, oh, you're just living off the government. And it's like, no, actually, no, because one, they don't have a social security number. And two, one of the first things people learn is when they come here is don't get anything from the government, because that can affect you when you become a resident, when you become a citizen, when your child turns 21 and they petition for you, they're going to ask you, on the residency form saying, did you ever receive support from the government? If you say yes, you may be, denied green card.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's also kind of important, that misinformation of like, this is not what's actually happening. They're not living off the government. And it's also, Hispanics or Latinos and are hardworking people.
Because they work. Yeah. Yeah. What have you learned about yourself as you've done this work in the last 5 years of maybe a little break in the middle and now?
What have I learned about myself?
Yeah.
That I have to take care of myself. I need to take care of myself to be able to take care of others.
How did you learn that?
By having a child.
That'll do it. That's classic.
That's
like
it, I always said, I always joked around that the man there hasn't been a man born that can tell me what to do. And then I had a son.
Yeah.
Which, he's taught me that I have to slow down.
Okay. Yeah.
I have to, because I'm always on the go, trying to, do everything that I can.
Yeah.
In that time frame, but I don't take care of myself.
I just don't know how you can slow down in moments like this. Like how you can make yourself slow
down.
Yeah.
I've been able to slow down is I have tried to not look at my phone.
Yeah.
And I have put my phone on do not disturb, because on my watch, it dings and, I get the notifications on my, wrist. I don't even have to have my phone on me. So I've put my phone on do not disturb. Right. I have my family and like close friends on like, if, it's an emergency, they can contact me.
Got it.
Or I have my email open, at work, it's like emails open. But that's kind of how I've learned to slow down, because then in the beginning, what I was doing is social media, sending screenshots here and there, talking in different groups. Of
mobilizing.
Exactly. Yeah. Like doing what I could. And then it's like, oh, shoot, I got to go to this elementary school to give a presentation.
Yes.
And so then I'm all anxious, all, heightened. And then it's like, I have to talk to 30 fifth graders about how to take care of your mental health.
Yes. Online tone is very much mobilized.
Yes.
Which is probably good, but also like you just can't do it all the time.
Yeah.
I heard recently that like we're getting into a place where people are using like internet use has peaked, and people are using the internet less and less, which I think is really interesting. And I think one of the reasons for that is people find it less useful in everyday life. And in general, they are recognizing that it is more like a momentary, like distracting, but also like, it just creates these emotions. It's created to create these emotions. That's not news, but like, it exists to create these emotional reactions, and people are starting to recognize that. And I think when I go to the internet in a conscious way, particularly the algorithmic stuff, sometimes it's just like, I need to maybe be a little more vigilant. Yeah. Or aware of what's happening. Yeah. Which it's interesting. There's that positive use, but I think it's can be pretty negative as well.
It's also that it depends on the platform you're going to as well. Yeah. Right? So if I want to become informed of like what's going on in my area, I'll go to Facebook. Yeah. All right. Maybe I'll see, just a family friend just had a baby recently, and I'm like, oh, yay. They just had a baby. Great for them. That's something positive. Yeah. But then ice was just spotted around the corner, and you're like, oh.
It's jarring.
Here's reality. Yeah. If I want to laugh, I'll log on to Instagram or, X, Twitter. Yeah. If I want a good laugh, like I'll, if I want those, I'll log on to those.
I think you're just clarifying how fraught all of this is, though. And like, things are such a mixed bag. It's crazy.
Yeah. And then you never know. You might get some like interesting thing on Twitter, and I'm like, yeah, never mind. I think I'm just going to log off.
To the local of all of it, like mostly Facebook is where I'm finding all the local content, is you really do get a mix of, I find that you get a bit of a skewed view of your community in the sense that, like, when I talk to people in real life, they're a lot more considerate and thoughtful and human than people who are spewing talking points onto community message boards and stuff like that.
Yeah. So it's a mixture. I've seen a mixture of like those comments versus, oh, thank you for, our community. Sometimes there are anonymous people saying, thank you for your supporting our community, because again of that, we don't talk about this. I don't want to become a target, which is sad.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I just keep thinking about, this is just really recent and in my head, but like Batavia had a city council meeting where we sort of addressed some of this, and it was there was an informational presentation from a couple of different organizations, and then people wanted to speak. So apparently a group had organized to come and to speak in favor of the ICE raids and stuff. And it was weird. It was weird because I watch a lot of city council meetings, not like front to back, but every now and then I'll pull them up, and they're always really, and I've also been interviewing aldermen. Okay. And the reason that was so jarring is because it's such a contrast to what we have been talking about it with the aldermen, is like how Batavia is this unique place where people come and have like really respectful discussions with each other. And there's a lot of, every now and then, like it'll get a little heated, but like it's mostly like very calm compared to other places. And then that night was not. It was weird. It was weird in that it felt like it felt inorganic is the word I would use. Like oh man, how do I talk about this? Anyway, what is even my point? I think I'm just processing it.
Yeah. And that sometimes, and with these, dialogues and these, you using your privilege and your platform, you're just talking about it because who knows how many other people
are feeling that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then it's like, do I bring it up?
That's a really good point.
Am I that person that brings it up? There's a phenomenon, a sociology phenomenon. I forgot the name of it, but if there's more people around, people are less likely to do something.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I forgot what it's called.
I got to look it up. The bystander effect.
Yes, there we go.
The bystander effect.
Yes. My psychology professor would be very upset.
And I think there's a thing in, I'm just going to speak candidly now about my experience in Batavia. There's a thing in Batavia where you want to be nice and kind even. Yeah. And Batavia does have a good tendency to fight for other people and their dignity and stuff like that for the most part. I think a lot of people do that. But I think that it puts us on our heels when people will come ready to fight.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, where we're at right now, a little bit maybe. And I think I'll shout out Joe Urbantrout, who has a newsletter called Queering the Suburbs. And it is, he wrote a specific entry in that about I think the newsletter entry was like, now is not the time to not show up or something. Oh, okay. And it was really directed square into my face because I read that after the city council meeting that I watched on YouTube, and I was going to go because they were doing the informational thing. Okay. And I was interested in these issues. And I told Jennifer, I said, I'm just not up for it. So I think I'll just watch it on YouTube. But what my presence would have been there, meant there, is different than me watching it on YouTube and being aware of it. So I'm just processing again. And as we talk, I'm realizing there are two sets of neighbors we have to figure out how to deal with. And one is the people we've been talking about who are affected by these things. And there's the people who don't quite get it. And I'm trying to figure out how to articulate this, but there's sort of a knee-jerk reaction to immigrant people, to people unlike us, that it goes beyond not knowing how to welcome them in. It's like, I actually am feeling displaced by you being here. And there's an ugliness to that dialogue that's happening. And so I think what I'm struggling with is how to address both of those groups of people, or how to, I don't have any illusions that I'm going to create a bridge between those two groups of people, but how do you bring this group that is angry to understand that there's also a group that is fearful for good reason and that deserves to live and belong in our community? Right now, in this moment, what gives you hope?
My generation.
Oh, interesting.
My generation gives me hope because I'm not sure if you've seen any of the lives that people are, when there is an ICE.
Live streams?
Yeah, the live streams on Facebook. People are just going Facebook Live. I mean, it's all on my feed. It's people who either I'm friends with or friends of friends or just in these groups with. And they're out there, with their phones videotaping. Here, this is the license plate. This is, what this person looks like. What's your badge number? What's, asking the agents information that should be available. Yeah.
But what gives you hope is people who people in your generation sort of being vigilant and doing live streams and stuff like that.
Live streams and actually
protecting one another.
Exactly. Yeah. Educating themselves and saying, okay, this is what I legally can do and then can't do.
Yeah.
Right.
Is this strictly in the Latina community, or do you see allies white people doing these?
Okay. I've seen allies. I've had, friends from all different parts of my life, or people that I, grew up with, or people that I went to college with, kind of reaching out and saying, hey, how are you? Just kind of check, or thank you for sharing this. Yeah. Which I think it's good to feel that at least my message and at least my generation's message is getting out there. Right.
When you are talking to younger people you work with, how do you convey hope to them?
I talk about it in waves, right? Sometimes there's a big wave, but sometimes there's a little wave. And we can focus on those really hard times, But it's important to look back on the small waves and the small kind of things that kind of get us through. It's not always going to be like this. At least, I hope so. I'm trying to think positively. But it's like, there's always, we can look back and kind of history and what's kind of happened, and specifically like World War II and that, the Holocaust, and hopefully learn from that, learn from what happened there and saying, okay, it's not going to happen here. At least we hope so.
There's also the waves of just like everyday life right now.
Yeah.
There are not every moment is like, you know. Sometimes there are good things happening.
Sometimes, those little waves of so-and-so had a baby, or look, I got to go on this trip, or I got to, for my example, I got to see the Jonas Brothers this past weekend.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was huge. That was, that was a big wave, positive wave for me.
Yeah.
But then it's like, all right, coming back to reality, it's like, all right, taking from that moment.
Yeah.
Feeling, going back to that and saying, okay, I was able to have the privilege to live that moment. Now that I kind of filled up my cup, how can I help others fill up their cup?
That's good. I like that. Especially that imagery of waves. And there's like, I don't know, this is like, there's space for more water there.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
it's nice. And but only if you live in it, because I think that it is our tendency to sort of not to allow the stress and anxiety of one moment to just like fill up everything,
Yeah.
But I like that framing because I think it clarifies.
It's like that bittersweet, right? It's like there's probably memories that you have that were probably really joyous, right? Like having kids. And then there was a part there that was like pretty scary.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to focus on the scary part all the time.
Yeah.
You might talk about it and you're processing it, but you're mostly going to focus on what the positive thing that came out of it, the positive emotions that came out of it.
Yeah. Makes sense. Okay. Last question. To you, what does it mean to belong in a community?
For me, it means I am pouring into my community, but I'm also getting something from my community. It's a reciprocal relationship, right? And then when you're not getting what you need, that's where you kind of feel that sense of, I don't belong here. I'm not welcomed here.
Or if you're not giving, you can feel that way.
Yeah. And that's where it's like, okay, what is this? What is this area? Is this area fulfilling my needs?
Thanks for listening to Area Code Batavia. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. If you enjoyed this podcast, you should absolutely subscribe to the newsletter. Just click the link in the show notes. Most importantly, if you know someone who would love to hear this podcast, please share it with them. Word of mouth is the best way to grow our community and help more people feel like they belong in Batavia, Illinois. Batavia is produced by Area Code Audio. It's hosted and produced by me, Richard Clark, with additional production help from Jennifer Clark. Edited and mixed by Matt Linder.